Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
A very good evening to you, lovely people. It's 9 p.m. This is the Patrick Christys Tonight Show with me, Martin Dawberry, standing in for Pat.
Of migrants have attempted to cross the channel just hours after 12 people, including a pregnant woman and 6 children, died when their boat sank.
And more than 3,000 migrants are waiting on the beaches of France despite the tragic death of 12 in the channel yesterday. And despite that Starmer Macron-loving Le Bromance just a few weeks ago, now the French are blaming Britain's soft-touch migrant rules for the channel deaths. Plus,
so can the Prime Minister explain to Britain's low-income pensioners why he has taken money away from them whilst at the same time given more money to highly paid train drivers?
Yeah, Rishi Sunak sticks the boot into Starmer at PMQ today, blasting, why did you prioritise train drivers over vulnerable pensioners? And
the simple truth is that the deaths that occurred were all avoidable.
And a damning report lays bare the culture of dishonesty and the unscrupulous cladding firms that led to Grenfell. We're speaking to a representative of a Grenfell victims group. Plus,
as a result of the ballot, Priti Patel is eliminated from the contest.
Dame Priti Patel is booted out of the Tory leadership contest, but be honest, does anybody care? And on my panel tonight, it's the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, businessman and activist and friend of the show, Adam Brooks, and of course, broadcaster Nina Mishkov. Oh, and he's at it once again.
And the Prime Minister knows.
Yeah, Starmer is calling Rishi Sunak the Prime Minister. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Well, to show, it's a delight to have your company. Now, tonight's big question I'll be asking surely is this. Are the Refugees Welcome Brigade the ones who are truly responsible for the continuing deaths in the Channel? But first, it's time for your latest news headlines, and it's Sophia Wensler.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines just after 9 o'clock. The Grenfell Tower fire, which killed 72 people, was a result of decades of failure. That's according to a long-awaited report. Over almost 1,700 pages, the Grenfell report reveals how missed opportunities by the government, building companies, contractors and council staff turned Grenfell into a death trap. Families and survivors of the deadly blaze 7 years ago say today's final damning report shows they were failed by calculated dishonesty and greed. Housing, Communities and Local Government Minister Rashanara Ali said the blame lies with the previous government.
The report sets out that successive governments have failed to provide the protection and tackle this issue. And so what's absolutely crucial is that we make sure that buildings that are unsafe, the remediation work happens speedily. It hasn't happened fast enough. People are living in unsafe buildings and they need these buildings to be remediated.
Rishi Sunak, now leader of the opposition, has attacked Labour's move to axe the winter fuel allowance for millions of pensioners. He faced off with Sir Keir Starmer at the first Prime Minister's questions since Parliament returned from the summer recess. The Conservative leader accused the Prime Minister of taking money from low-income pensioners and ploughing it into inflation-busting pay rises for union workers. However, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer defended his decision to cut winter fuel payments, saying it's essential to stabilise the economy. And some breaking news now. A 14-year-old boy has been charged with the murder in relation to the death of 80-year-old Bim Coley. Mr. Coley was attacked while walking his dog in Franklin Park, Brownstone Town near Leicester on Sunday and later died in hospital. His family say their hearts are broken. Hundreds of migrants have attempted to cross the Channel just hours after 12 people, including a pregnant woman and 6 children, died when their boat sank. Earlier, French police stormed a beach to stop around 200 others from attempting the crossing. Dramatic footage also showed people wading out into the water, many not wearing life jackets, before pushing away from the shore. Those migrants have now made it over to the UK, as exclusive GB News footage reveals. And Dame Priti Patel has become the first Tory MP to be voted out of the party's leadership contest, with only 14 votes from 121 Tory MPs. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick came top of the ballot with 28 votes. MPs cast their opening votes this afternoon, reducing the number of candidates from 6 to 5. The contenders now include James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat, Mel Stride and Kemi Badenoch. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, yesterday, 12 illegal immigrants, including 6 children and a pregnant woman, drowned in the Channel off the coast of France when their flimsy dinghy simply ripped in two. Yet today, the French Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, laid the blame not with the heartless people smugglers or indeed the inept French police, but with Britain's soft-touch migration rules. And do you know what? I reckon he's got a point. In total, 80 were on that death trap dinghy and they paid people smugglers £1,000 each. Now, before yesterday even happened, 30 had already perished in the Channel. They knew the risk that they were taking, but they took it anyway. Well, why? Well, Mr. Darmanin said that the UK was a place where you can work without papers and where you have little chance of being expelled. But there's more to it than that. The illegals know they'll be greeted with a silver foil blanket and a golden ticket of free accommodation, benefits and a 90% chance of gaining asylum. Now, an estimated 1.2 million are already in the UK illegally. The asylum system now costs us a whopping £6.6 billion every single year. On Friday, we learned that unemployment benefits for 1.7 jobless immigrants sacks British taxpayers back a staggering £8 billion every single year. Now, in April, the mayor of Wimereux, Jean-Luc Debarlay, said the English pay us to stop the boats, but the English give them accommodation, food, a bank account and let them work without regulation. It is the English who are responsible for every boat that sails across the Channel to England. Well, Monsieur Darmanin is partly right, because those of us who want to stop the boats, we're not responsible. We want to end the tragedy in the Channel. We want to stop the boats and stop the deaths. But every member of parliament, every civil servant, every human rights lawyer, every charity worker, or every so-called anti-racist who keeps crying, refugees, welcome here, they're the bleeding hearts with the blood on their hands. So long as they roll out the red carpet, thousands more illegal immigrants will risk perishing in the Channel for the golden ticket to remain in the United Kingdom. Now let's get the thoughts of my panel. And tonight I'm joined by the Adam Brooks, the pub owner and the businessman, Mark Littlewood, who's the director of the Popular Conservatives, and of course by Nina Mishkov, the broadcaster. So welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start with you, Adam. What are your thoughts on the continued deaths in the Channel? Do you think that the French minister has a point? We're rolling out the red carpet, and that is why the deaths are continuing.
Of course he's got a point. I've been banging on about this on Twitter and online for 10 years. We've got a massive illegal immigration problem in this country, and it's only getting worse. And now we've got a Labour government that is even softer than the Conservatives. I can't believe that is the case, but we have. We have got people that are travelling here. They're economic migrants. They're not asylum seekers. There might be a few, but you have to be very naive to believe that these people are not just coming to this country for what they can get. As the French guy has said, they get free housing, free food, free medical treatment, free travel in some instances. Now, why did they not settle in the several countries that they passed through to get here? Because many of them call us El Dorado. They think they're going to get rich. They've got their housing to fall back on, but they think they're going to get rich. A lot of them go and work for these delivery apps, these food delivery apps, or these taxi services. There's a lot of criminal behaviour amongst these apps. If they was to be raided, you would end up finding so many illegal immigrants. That's without the danger to our society. We don't know who they are, what they've done. One French person in Dunkirk, one of the authorities said it was like guerrilla warfare on the streets and in the camps. These people are either here now or they're on their way. These are people that are stabbing people, that are shooting people. And I want to be labelled as far right for saying this and highlighting this. I've got 3 children. Enough is enough, Martin.
Well, Nina Mishkov, you're nodding your head. You seem to agree that Mark...
I'm shaking my head at what he's saying because it's very inflammatory. You're implying...
What, the truth is inflammatory?
No.
Okay.
What you're saying are facts that you can't back up.
I can back up.
No, you can't.
I've linked...
Wait,
1 second. You shut me down last week.
Wait.
I posted...
Adam,
several articles last week.
Adam, we're not talking about last week. We're talking about now, and you made your statement. I'm now replying to your statement.
I backed it up on Twitter.
I don't care whether you wrote it on a sign and hang it out your window. Nobody cares, OK?
People do care for the truth.
People do care for the truth. And what I will not take is you exaggerating and making blind assumptions about people. You know, you talk about, you say that they're shooting people, they're stabbing.
That is fact.
But that you're making out these are all criminal people, that they're coming here for economic... You cannot say many. You cannot say many. These people are coming from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Eritrea, where they're fleeing war. Now,
why not settle in France or Greece?
Well, I'll answer that in a minute. What I want to say to you is you're implying they're all men, they're all violent, they're all coming to attack our women.
I don't think he said that, to be fair.
No, but
he hasn't said that.
He's implying that. Can I just say...
Rather than attacking Adam, can we address the point?
No, I'm going to address the point. I'm going to address the point.
Is the pull factor so big that these tragic disasters will keep happening so long as the benefits, the employment benefits is there waiting in Britain? That's the question I'd like to answer, please. Don't have a go at Adam.
I'm not having a go at Adam. I'm just having a go at his points.
Backed up by facts.
Let's move on.
Move on. OK, so Germany has exactly the same benefits as the UK does. So they're not coming here necessarily just for the benefits. In Germany, you're entitled to housing, to medical treatment.
Well, that's probably why they've got 2.15 million illegal immigrants in Germany between 2013 and 2022.
Germany takes
the most in all of Europe.
Germany takes more asylum seekers than France and Spain combined, and they both take more than we do.
Let's move on now, Mark. You've been waiting patiently. The point there being proven that those generous benefits in Germany and Britain has the net effect of attracting millions of immigrants to Germany also?
Yeah, look, there's a whole range of factors going on here. There are pull factors. I mean, I think the fact that, you know, we speak the English language is actually a pull factor for a good number of people from across the globe. But I'd look at it this way, Martin, from a strictly economic perspective. These people will be measuring up, not perfectly, but as well as they can, their risk and rewards of trying this. And one feature of that is how likely am I going to drown in the Channel? That'll be one thing they're featuring and factoring in. But another is, when I get to the UK, what is the package awaiting me? What is the chance that I will be deported or successful? What are the benefits I can get? What are the chances, as Adam was alluding to, that I might be able to slip into the black market or the grey market economy? All of those judgments lead to a person deciding whether or not to try and get it. And we have been absolutely woeful at deportations. The legal process is a complete nightmare now. It's now nearly impossible to actually bring about mass deportations. So the judgment is a rational judgment by those seeking to come here that the risk is worth it for the rewards. And it seems to me, therefore, that we need to reduce the rewards if you want to reduce that incentive.
And that brings us back to that original point. If the person who's acting like the adult in the room here is the French Interior Minister, Gérard Darmanin, he's saying, he's not attacking Britain, he's saying the fact of the matter is the pull factors are so great. The black economy, the houses, the benefits, the tiny chance of deportation. The French minister is saying, so long as that happens, they'll keep risking their lives. He's just rolling out the point that it's the pull factor that makes this risk so appealing.
All of Europe is a pull factor to someone coming from Eritrea. So that makes a difference. What also pulls people here is that they have family here.
Sure.
That they speak English and they have family. That's a far bigger pull factor
Does that
than
mean
anything
that we should
else.
open our borders to anybody on the planet?
No, of course.
What
it's the biggest problem we have. And I understand that. I'm not saying come one, come all. I'm saying we need to make a better deal with Europe. We need to make a better deal with France, which is exactly what Darmanin was
Martin,
saying.
as you pointed out, Martin, earlier in your monologue, 90% of asylum applications are successful. Now, that just doesn't...
It's more like 75 the last time I checked.
This doesn't smell right to me. Yeah. So the process...
It's 90 because the ones who go back into the system, the actual deportations is 10%. Anyway,
the deportations 10%. Now, this just strikes me, on the face of it, to be way too high a success rate. And that would be one of the things, again, that people are factoring in. Do I have a 90% chance, a 70% chance of actually getting asylum? Or do I only have a 12 or 15 or 20% chance?
I'd also like to say...
Let's get Adam Brooks being very patient.
Just quick, last year, Channel 4 tried to highlight in a very polished interview with a migrant about his stressful journey through so many countries and why he came. And he ended up admitting that he had asylum already granted in Greece and that he then risked his life coming across the Channel because he wanted a house and not a tent. This underlines the reason why they are leaving these countries to come here. We are a soft touch.
We are not a soft touch. We are absolutely not a soft touch. And as for the idea that they're all economic migrants, or a majority of them, they're not. It's not a majority. People are fleeing persecution and God knows what else.
And then going back there on holiday.
You're also saying that they're men, that they're shooting.
They're 80 or 90% men that are coming across the Channel.
That goes against the people who died in the Channel. The people who died. There was a pregnant woman and 6 children.
A tragedy.
That was a tragedy, but in terms of the actual demographics and the statistics, it was an anomaly. But back to the final point, if the French Foreign Minister, the Interior Minister, is saying, so long as this system is in place, this will continue in perpetuity, why are you arguing with the state of things in Britain in terms of what Adam Brooks is saying or what I'm saying? The facts are on the table.
We need a better system. We need a better arrangement with France, which Boris Johnson screwed up.
Boris isn't in power now. The numbers are going up.
No. Well, exactly, because the Tory government screwed the whole thing up after Brexit.
You can't blame the Tories anymore because Keir Starmer's in power.
He's been in charge, but we discussed this last week.
And they're coming across in their droves.
But it's amazing, isn't it? This guy's a middle-of-the-road French politician.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely, in my view, hit the nail on the head. And if he'd said that as a British politician, I've got no doubt he'd be labelled far right.
Part of him feels guilty because it happened in their waters, and they've been paid a shed load of money to stop
How do you
that
know
sort of
that?
thing.
Have you spoken to him?
I said part of that may be that he feels guilty. If I were him, I would feel guilty. Would you not? Would you not? Would you not? If you were the mayor of Boulogne, would you not feel guilty that on your beach this had happened?
Why would I feel guilty for people that I had no control over coming into my country that are then coming through to another country?
No, you've been paid 500 million to prevent this from happening.
Pointing out, in this particular tragedy, 15 people were removed from the craft. They were all offered the chance to return to shore and refused the chance to return to shore. They knew the risks. There had already been 35 perished in the Channel this year before yesterday, and that's the point you were making, Martin. The risks are the risks, and they deem them to be risks worth taking.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we have got the risk-reward ratio wrong here. Given the quantum of migration, it's difficult not to talk in generalisations. So Adam's not saying that they're all shooters and stabbers, but you do have to make some broad brush points. And the numbers are completely out of control. The British electorate have voted against this again and again and again. And at some point, the government is going to have to put in place an administrative system and a legal system that is actually able to deal with this. No sign of it under Yvette Cooper.
Haven't done it. That's why.
We have to move on. Nina, Adam, Mark, we'll come back to this point, I'm sure, another time. Thank you very much. Now, still to come, a damning report has laid bare the culture of dishonesty and unscrupulous cladding firms that led to the Grenfell disaster.
The simple truth is that the deaths that occurred were all avoidable.
And coming soon, I'll get a reaction from a representative of the Grenfell victims group in just a few moments' time. But up next, as Labour considers raising the state pension by £400 after widespread outrage over cuts to winter fuel payments, which are predicted to hit the poorest pensioners the hardest. Is it all too little, too late? That's next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
On Tuesday, the 3rd of September, at St Paul's Church in Wilton Place in London, a lucky few will sing highlights from Mozart's Don Giovanni in front of a paying audience with an orchestra and under the baton of Gary Matthewman, the conductor and artistic director of Brunswick Vocal Arts. Why is it important that young singers have this opportunity with an orchestra?
There's a gauntlet, if you like, that I think lots of young singers have to run between finishing the relative comfort of their conservatoire education and becoming firmly established as professional singers. Lots of the ones who show real verve and real promise and work really hard end up for a little bit too long being trapped in a kind of cycle of being the understudy. But some of them are ready to kind of go that extra mile and reach that next milestone. And we as a charity thought, well, what a lovely thing it would be to handpick some of these best young singers, give them intensive coaching on the role that they're going to perform, give them the chance to work with professional players for the first time, and crucially, have the thing professionally filmed and recorded. Because the first question all young singers are asked when they meet somebody influential now is, well, what's your website?
You have coached the singer, coaching the singer either towards a recital or towards their performance, their part in an opera. Tell me a little bit about that process.
It's a case of asking them questions which make them bring a character to life, so that when an audience member witnesses this person singing, they don't just think, oh, that's a pretty noise. They think, oh, there's something going on here that I recognise. And especially in a context like this, which is related, I think, to when people sing recitals. Say they sing 20 songs in that one evening. They've got to present 20 roles, 20 mini operatic roles, if you like. And we need to see the change in their bearing. We need to see the change in their approach to the text, as well as to the kind of the technical focus of their singing and how they produce sound.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in the studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, covering for Patrick, Martin Daubney, only on GB News. And it's time now for our head-to-head. OK, gloves off, because shocking new analysis today has revealed that 84% of the poorest pensioners will lose their winter fuel payments as a result of the Chancellor's plans to save a measly £1.4 billion. Now, analysis by the former Pensions Minister, Sir Steve Webb, has shown that out of the 1.9 million pensioners living in poverty, only 300,000 will retain their winter fuel payments. Now, it's no wonder that Rishi Sunak slammed the government's decision during Prime Minister's Question Times earlier today, accusing the Prime Minister of choosing workers over pensioners.
It was his decision, and his decision alone, to award a train driver on £65,000 a pay rise of almost £10,000. And it was also his decision that a pensioner living on just £13,000 will have their winter fuel allowance removed. So can the Prime Minister explain to Britain's low-income pensioners why he has taken money away from them whilst at the same time given more money to highly paid train drivers?
It's also worth pointing out that £10 billion was magically found to pay NHS workers and teachers. And this all comes after it was revealed that the state's pension could rise by more than £400 next year. But with experts warning that the rise could drag thousands of retirees into paying more tax, and widespread outrage at Labour's treatment of hard-working pensioners, is all of this too little, too late? Well, let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/your say, or tweet to me at GBNews. And while you're there, why not vote in our poll? I'll bring you those results in a few short minutes. But now, going head-to-head on this topic is the CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns, and also the political consultant, Suzanne Evans. Let's start with you, Suzanne, ladies first. Do you think it's fair to say that train drivers seem more important to this government than pensioners? A measly £1.4 billion in savings here, but they found £10 billion for public sector workers. Is it turning into no country for old folk?
Well, I think it is. Let me tell you what a pensioner I had a coffee with this afternoon said. They hate us, she said. They hate us. She's talking about the fact that they've removed the winter fuel allowance, which means that the £400 pension increase is pretty much eradicated. When you take into account the fact that there also won't be a £300 cost of living fuel payment this year, which was up to £300 last year, we're in negative territory with that £400 rise. So I look at it and I think, you know, Labour made such a huge fuss about not killing Granny during COVID times. Now they seem to be determined to kill Granny by making her freeze to death in her own home, potentially taxing her pension as well, potentially levying a wealth tax on her house. They haven't even ruled out charging her an additional 25% in council tax. It's not difficult to see, is it, why that pensioner said to me today, they hate us.
Alex Cairns, do you think the pensioners got a point? Do the government hate pensioners?
No, I don't think they have a point. Let's remember the state pension costs $124 billion plus the $2 billion of winter fuel payments. You know, we're talking about 20% of the government budget for 15% of the population. It's a ridiculous situation where every single year pensioners are looked after, where there's a big portion of the country where we've seen, you know, young people that can't afford houses. We've seen youth clubs closed, mental health services cut, you know, the transport situation, HS2 has been overspent. We spent £600 million on Rwanda. We spent £2 billion on wasted PPE. I mean, the reality is government is about choices, and actually the Labour government are looking at this situation. Even Kemi Badenoch last year talked about the fact that it should be means tested. We've got a lot of people that aren't poor pensioners, actually are pensioners that have a lot of money. These are people that have worked their whole life. They probably have assets, they have properties, they have lots of different ways of getting income, and actually lots of them didn't even need the winter fuel payments that they were eligible to. So, you know, government is about choices. These are difficult choices. Every single part of society will be affected in some way, and actually I'm fed up of pensioners always being protected. You know, every part of society is going to feel the punch as we go through a period of trying to clear up, which was 14 years of poor economic decisions.
Alex, if a government makes choices, which it clearly has to, then the point today was the choice was made to pay train drivers a whopping 10 grand pay rise. They're already on £65,000. Another choice that was made was to keep on pumping out £8 billion a year in unemployment benefit to immigrants. Another choice that's being made is £6.6 billion that goes into the asylum system. You're pitting old people against young people here, but if it's down to choices, surely British taxpayers should come first.
You're giving a few examples of where the government...
Well, they're all true.
Well, they might be true, but again, it's all about choices. I just mentioned that it costs us £125 billion every year for the state pensions. There are lots of young working people that don't see any benefit at all. You know, let's talk about young carers.
But they'll be old some point soon. They don't live forever. It's not Oasis.
No, but actually, we have an ageing population. So what are we going to do? We're just going to keep on giving pensioners more money and then letting young people, you know, not have any additional budget for anything. I mean, it's a ridiculous situation. Also, this is a political conversation, right? You know, for a long time, we all know why pensioners get looked after, because they vote in their droves. That's the only reason why for many, many years, Conservative governments have given pensioners what they want, because they vote for them.
Alex, I'm going to have to let Suzanne come in. isn't that a point, Suzanne? Old people do vote, but they don't vote for the Labour Party. Is that why the Labour Party are throwing them under the bus?
No, I'm absolutely appalled at what I'm hearing here. You know, we have something in this country called the Equality Act. I've been quite a critic of it. But I think Alex has just about broken every rule in it. The ageism coming from his mouth, I actually find quite appalling and astonishing. You know, oh, I'm sick to death of having to protect pensioners. Pensioners who have paid for their pension. Pensioners who have worked and who the Labour Party is now expecting them to work another year longer for that pension, if rumours are to be believed. I'm sorry. I am sick to death of young people in this country not having respect for their elders, not having respect for people who have paid into their pension pots, who have worked damned hard all their lives. And young people seem to think they don't deserve to have a happy old age. What do you want, Alex? Do you want us to send them all to Switzerland? Because the way you're talking, I'm frankly appalled.
Well, of course you're appalled, and you know, as a former senior member of UKIP, again, a lot of your voters are the demographic you're talking about. I'm not surprised. Let's remember, we've got a situation where I don't remember lots of people being absolutely appalled at this situation where, you know, youth serves clubs, sports. 100 million goes to sports clubs around the country. We need to get young people into fit and healthy exercises. It's all about choices. Pensioners, remember, the state pension is not being affected here. This is an additional payment to help with poor choices that Liz government made during the 2022 mini budget. This is an additional payment. The state pension is not being affected, Suzanne.
I'm sorry, you're showing a complete... you simply don't understand what Liz Truss's budget was all about and the fallout of that. So I'm just going to ignore that, frankly. It's economically illiterate. But the fact is, pensioners should be protected. Elderly people in their last fruitful years of life, I'm afraid, do not deserve to be thrown on the scrap heap. And I think any right-thinking person who respects human rights would agree. I'm very sorry you don't.
That's an absolutely ridiculous statement. Lots of pensioners are not just relying on the winter fuel allowance, right? Lots of them have savings, they have assets. The state pension is not being affected. You know, there's a big portion of the country that are suffering. You know, it's all about choices. They're not touching the state pension. That's going up. The winter fuel payments are additional. It wasn't going to last forever. And again, I'm not being economically illiterate, as you say. Everyone knows that there was poor decisions made by the Truss government, which meant that interest rates went up.
Decisions made by the Bank of England, actually, and the Bank of England has now produced 2 reports admitting that it was pretty much entirely responsible for what happened in the wake of that mini budget. So you're also not remembering that many people don't receive the full state pension. Around 150,000 pensioners only get £100 a week. That's less than half the full state pension. It is not a given that I mean, to be honest, you know, I might agree with you when it comes to those fat cat public sector pensions. I think perhaps they should be looked at and they should be cut. I'm not sure the country can afford those. But to band all pensioners into one bracket as being wealthy, able to afford it, I'm afraid is a complete misunderstanding about the brutal facts of life in old age.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Alex Cairns and Susan Evans. We could keep going all night. Final word to Susan Evans there. Thank you very much. Now, who do you agree with in that epic dust-up? Now, as Labour considers raising the state pension by £400, is it too little, too late? Well, Alex on X says this. Absolutely. The winter fuel payment cut was the first of many blows. They are also threatening to raise the retirement age and then scrap the council tax discount for single-person households, which will disproportionately impact OAPs. Utterly disgraceful. David also on X adds this. It's far too late. They're going to struggle through the winter and may not survive if it's really cold. What good is £400 after that? And Helen also on X says this. If I'd never worked, I would still get a pension credit, etc. But I did work full-time and I get a small workplace pension. Added to the state pension, I became a taxpayer again. That is messed up. And now your verdict is in because 92% of you agree that it's too little, too late, while 8% say that it isn't. Thank you very much for your votes for a great debate. Now, coming up, the Tory leadership hopefuls have been whittled down to 5 after the first round of voting took place this afternoon.
As a result of the ballot, Priti Patel is eliminated from the contest.
Yes, Dame Priti Patel has been dumped out of the Conservative leadership contest. So, will Reform UK offer her an olive branch? And can any of the remaining candidates ever see off Nigel Farage's party? Reform UK's immigration and justice spokesperson Anne Widdecombe will give me her take very soon. But first, the tragic deaths of 72 people in the Grenfell Tower disaster were all avoidable. And that was the damning indictment of a landmark report that was published today. So is it not high time that criminal prosecutions were brought against cladding firms and those responsible for the tragedy? Well, Kimia Zabiyan from the Grenfell Next of Kin campaign joins me now in just a few minutes. Please don't go anywhere.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. We're at the start of a pretty wet period across southern areas with a warning in force all the way through until the end of Friday. But it will remain quite dry actually across north and western areas. We've got high pressure starting to build in from the north and west. We will develop an easterly wind, however, so that's going to drag in some cloud across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England as well overnight tonight. Further north and west though, staying dry and clear across Northern Ireland and western areas of Scotland as well as some northwestern areas of Wales. Into the south though, some outbreaks of very heavy rain starting to develop, and we do have that warning in force. So potentially a bit of a fresh start to the day across the northwestern areas of Scotland, but it's across the south with plenty of cloud around and outbreaks of heavy rain. We could see some travel disruption where we have got that warning in force. Not everywhere is going to see the rain all day, but where you do see it is likely to bring some surface water. Could be quite a murky start to the day across eastern areas of Scotland as well as northeastern England, but plenty of sunshine across Northern Ireland, the Western Highlands as well as the islands throughout Thursday, and it will feel quite warm in that sunshine with light winds. Much better weather than we've had lately across these areas, and in fact temperatures could climb higher than they have done since May by Friday across parts of the northwest. Very different story though in the south with outbreaks of heavy rain developing, most likely to turn quite heavy across southwestern areas of England, South Wales as well. So pretty dull day across the south, but quite a big difference from the northwest. And a similar day to come on Friday. Further outbreaks of rain across the south, so we'd like to see further flooding issues and surface water. Easterly wind will continue to bring some cloud to the coast of the northeast, but it will burn back a little more, so there will be more in the way of sunshine on Friday, more widely in northern areas. Another fine day to come Saturday and Sunday in the north with further outbreaks of heavy rain across southern areas. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Martin Daubney, covering for Patrick, only on GB News. Now, a landmark report published today has exposed the culture of dishonesty and the unscrupulous cladding firms that led to the Grenfell fire disaster that resulted, of course, in 72 deaths back in June 2017. And here is the chairman of the inquiry speaking earlier today.
The simple truth is that the deaths that occurred were all avoidable, and those who lived in the tower were badly failed over a number of years and in a number of different ways by those who were responsible for ensuring the safety of the building and its occupants.
The report also accused the Tory government at the time of the tragedy of ignoring systemic problems with the building's safety and labelling concerned residents as troublemakers. Well, joining me now is Kimia Zabian from the Grenfell Next of Kin Group. Welcome to the show, Kimia. Thank you very, very much. So it's a landmark day, one that you would have no doubt have been waiting many, many years for. What's your takeaway from today? Do you think it's enough, or do you want to see proper justice now enacted?
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I'm the advocate for Grenfell Next of Kin. So my job, if you like, is to help them amplify their voice. And I think I can say with certainty that the immediate families of more than half of the deceased I feel a little kind of, it's a bit bittersweet. You know, the inquiry, of course, is very thorough. The chairman does not mince his words. On the other hand, it's not really something that they asked for or needed. When your immediate family members, your mother or your father or your children, die in such horrible circumstances, most of the time, naturally, people want to see criminal prosecutions. And the problem is that it doesn't matter if it's the best inquiry in the world with the toughest recommendations and language. But for those people who lost their kith and kin, criminal prosecutions, particularly for what really, you know, strikes home as justice, is manslaughter charges. And those have, you know, there have been no prosecutions for 7 years because of the inquiry. And the chances of manslaughter charges are now actually diminished because of the inquiry.
And in terms of the Prime Minister today, Sir Keir Starmer, he said that all routes would be looked at, including the legal options. Is that what you would like to see, Kimmy? You'd like to see what the CEOs of the companies charged with manslaughter?
As far as the families who have lost their blood, you know, in this terrible tragedy, in the most awful, horrific way, and have had to endure unbelievable, horrific conversations that I can't even bear to repeat on their behalf, any human being would feel that they want to have a day in court where people are charged and have a fair trial, and a judge and jury decides guilty or not guilty. This is individuals for their negligence as well as corporations. The problem here is that the inquiry happened before criminal prosecutions. It delayed justice, it was the wrong way round, and it has not only re-traumatized them because they had to wait 7 years to get to this point, but actually because the inquiry names names and has given a platform to individuals and corporations to come and practice their defense, it would be very interesting to see if the CPS will actually be able to navigate, because of course the bar for manslaughter charges is very high, as it should be. And you have to meet the bar of probable conviction. Well, any barrister would tell you that that is actually really going to be difficult now, because the potential defendants have been given that stage, allowed to practice their defense, and may never actually be able to be charged with criminal manslaughter charges or gross negligence manslaughter. How would you feel if you were in that position?
May I interject and ask you, in terms of, there are still 300,000 homes, I believe, in the United Kingdom alone where this cladding is still in place. And you've also spoken passionately about fires abroad in places like Valencia. This is a global problem. What would you like to see done specifically about the cladding?
Well, as advocate for the families, again, I've amplified that on their behalf and also facilitated them to go to those countries after those fires happened. In Milan, we were there a few days after, and the same with Valencia, and stood in solidarity with those survivors and bereaved families, because this is a global issue. Basically, the companies target countries with weak regulatory practices. It's all completely above board and legal. And even after Grenfell, even the countries that banned the products, of course, never dealt with the legacy issue. Because as you can see here in the UK, it's almost too big. But I would just like to say that I think there's a direct comparison with the pharmaceutical industry. It is possible to bring these companies to account and to stop the sale of this product, to have one uniform standards, global standard, and to make sure this never happens again. And that would be a great legacy.
Thank you very much. We have to leave it there. Thank you for your time. It's fantastic. Camilla Zabian from the Advocates for the Grenfell Necks of King Group. Thanks for joining us. Now, coming up, is it time to declare a youth crime emergency? I'll tackle that with my panel at 10 p.m. But first, the first Tory leadership hopeful has been dumped out of the competition after the first round of voting this afternoon.
As a result of the ballot, Priti Patel is eliminated from the contest.
Yes, Dame Priti Patel is out of the race. So, will the former Home Secretary now find a home in Nigel Farage's Reform Party? Oh, and is Angela Rayner a massive hypocrite for considering scrapping the right to buy scheme? After all, she benefited pretty well from that. Reform UK's immigration and justice spokesperson Anne Widdecombe will give me her no-nonsense analysis next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister. Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
More than half of people aged 50 and over feel happier from having a friendship, and 46% feel a sense of belonging too. Tomorrow is the start of Friendship Month. The Oddfellows, a non-profit friendly society that provides older adults with opportunities to create new friendships, is now inviting more people this September to join their local groups and expand their friendship circles through giving a taster activity at local community centres. We're joined now by Jane Nelson, who's the CEO of Oddfellows. Good morning, Jane. Thanks for joining us. As someone in my mid-30s, I've even noticed as well that my own friendship group has diminished over the years as kind of, people get married and have kids, and they kind of drift apart and don't make time for each other.
How important is it to have friends separate to your family? What benefit does that bring you?
As you do get older, you do lose friends for a variety of reasons. Either you lose touch or they have an illness or they pass away as you get older. The stats show that people love spending time with their friends. It always takes somebody, doesn't it? Somebody's got to make that first step, to send a text to say, do you fancy meeting up for coffee, or do you fancy going to the pub, or whatever the arrangement's going to be. But sometimes somebody always has to be make that first step and text or phone. And I think the other key thing is it usually tends to be the same person, but that doesn't matter as long as that connectivity is made, because that's what you need. You need the connectivity. If you think about when we were children, we'd go around the playground and say, will you be my friend? Well, we don't tend to do that as we get older. But be brave. Look on Oddfellows website, see all the amazing events we've got on. Go to see what's going on in your area. Oddfellows.co.uk, or you can telephone 0800 028 1810, and our team will be more than happy to point them in the right direction of their local events. And there's so much going on. 300 going on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, standing in for Patrick, Martin Daubney, only on GB News. Now then, Priti Patel has become the first Tory MP to be voted out of the party's leadership contest, with only 14 votes from 121 Tory MPs. Now, Robert Jenrick came top of the ballots with 28 votes, and it leaves Jenrick, James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat, Mel Stride and Kemi Badenoch all battling out to replace Rishi Sunak. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Reform UK's Justice spokeswoman, Anne Widdecombe. Anne, welcome to the show. So, a lot of people quite surprised that Dame Priti Patel was the first horse to fall. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it is slightly surprising, but I don't feel an overwhelming sense of shock about it. There are quite a few right-wing candidates in there. Priti did not have a wonderful record when she was actually in a position where she might have done things. So maybe it's not so surprising. But quite honestly, Martin, I am not going to get exercised about this until we're down to the last two and we can actually see what the realistic choice is.
Now, I asked Lee Anderson a couple of days ago who his favourite candidate was. He said he didn't care. He said it was immaterial. And I wonder if actually many Conservative voters really care. I get people all the time here at GB News and saying to me, you know, the Tory party is almost toast. And all the people here are very competent, but they're also part of a 14-year failed plan. Will it make any difference who's the captain of the Titanic?
I don't think it will make a huge difference. I mean, I can't see any of those candidates making a very big difference. I think if one or two of them succeed, then, you know, I would be very, very doubtful indeed about the party's future. But I rather share Lee Anderson's view, you know. So what, basically? And it isn't just a question of competence and experience, which actually I value tremendously. And I think one of the big things that's gone wrong is we've had a very inexperienced parliament full of low-grade people on both sides of the House, quite honestly. And that is what has contributed to fiasco after fiasco.
But Widders, you're not telling me that the Reform Party wouldn't welcome Dame Priti Patel with open arms into your ranks?
I have no idea whether Dame Priti Patel has any interest in joining us at all. If she did, then I think, yes, she would be a very useful addition, but not as leader of the Tory party.
Is she right-wing enough for you, though? I mean, she has a pretty checkered history on immigration, for example.
Well, when you say is she right-wing enough, that is not the sole criterion. on which reform welcomes people into its midst. If it was, there are some people who wouldn't be there at all. Trying to portray us as some sort of right-wing nutters party is just not fair, and it's not valid.
I would never dream of making such assertions at all. And now, could I ask you about Angela Rayner, because she's preparing to axe the right to buy scheme that incidentally allowed her to buy her own council house. And by the way, she made, I think, about 48,500 quid from that, originally brought in, of course, by Maggie Thatcher, the Housing Secretary, and she's set to axe the tenants' right to buy their own council home if the property is a new build and cut the discount in place for those already living in one. Don't you think it's a bit ironic, given that Rayner herself bought her council house in 2007 and made a stack from it? What do you make of it?
Well, it's what is known as cutting off the ladder behind you. She climbed up the housing market that way, and now she's cutting off that means for other people. But I also think that abolishing right to buy is phenomenally short-sighted. I still get people to this day saying to me that their parents were only able to buy their first house because Mrs. Thatcher had made the sale of council houses possible. It means that where you've got tenants who are going to be in there for 25, 30 years, you don't have to maintain it for that length of time if you sell it. It isn't just a one-way flow, but what I do think is that it's a completely separate issue, nothing to do with right to buy. We need to look at the housing stock in this country.
Can I just interject there and point out that a lot of people, might be fans of right to buy, but it absolutely obliterated, it depleted Britain's social housing stock, and they were never rebuilt. And that, in many ways, caused a lot of problems for the working classes, did it not?
No, it is not true that right to buy is at the root of our housing crisis in this country. The growth in the population and social factors such as families splitting up, etc., has contributed enormously to that. What right to buy did, and I was vice chairman of a housing committee on a local council at the time, and what it did was it enabled us to sell stock that we were going to have to maintain because the people in it showed no signs of moving, which is fair enough, whatever. And there is that side to it. And just saying right to buy has depleted the housing stock, nonsense. If the council wasn't in debt, it was able, under Mrs. Thatcher's legislation, to build new houses. It was able to.
And Anne, could I get you quickly to answer? Do you think that the two frontrunners appear to be Badenoch and Jenrick? Is there a Thatcher amongst that pair?
No. There's no Thatcher in sight in all Parliament. There's no Thatcher there. He's certainly not in the Tory party.
Maybe they would be if you got back into it. Anne Widdecombe, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the show. Now, coming up, Prince Harry has reportedly said he'll only rejoin the royal fold if Prince William apologises to him. So will the warring brothers ever bury the hatchet? I think there's about as much chance of that apology as there is me flapping my arms and flying to the moon. Now, royal expert Richard Fitzwilliams will be on hand to give me the inside track very, very soon. But next, is it time to declare a youth crime emergency? I'll tackle that in just a few moments.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. We're at the start of a pretty wet period across southern areas with a warning in force all the way through until the end of Friday. But it will remain quite dry actually across north and western areas. We've got high pressure starting to build in from the north and west. We will develop an easterly wind, however, so that's going to drag in some cloud across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England as well overnight tonight. Further north and west though, staying dry and clear across Northern Ireland and western areas of Scotland as well as some northwestern areas of Wales. Into the south though, some outbreaks of very heavy rain starting to develop, and we do have that warning in force. So potentially a bit of a fresh start to the day across northwestern areas of Scotland, but it's across the south with plenty of cloud around and outbreaks of heavy rain. We could see some travel disruption where we have got that warning in force. Not everywhere is going to see the rain all day, but where you do see it is likely to bring some surface water. Could be quite a murky start to the day across eastern areas of Scotland as well as northeastern England, but plenty of sunshine across Northern Ireland, the Western Highlands as well as the islands. Through throughout Thursday, and it will feel quite warm in that sunshine with light winds. Much better weather than we've had lately across these areas, and in fact temperatures could climb higher than they have done since May by Friday across parts of the northwest. Very different story though in the south, with outbreaks of heavy rain developing, most likely to turn quite heavy across southwestern areas of England, South Wales as well. So pretty dull day across the south, but quite a big difference from the northwest. And a similar day to come on Friday. Further outbreaks of rain across the south, so we'll like to see further flooding issues and surface water. Easterly wind will continue to bring some cloud to the coast of the northeast, but it will burn back a little more, so there will be more in the way of sunshine on Friday, more widely in northern areas. Another fine day to come Saturday and Sunday in the north, with further outbreaks of heavy rain across southern areas. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
How would you like it? Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good evening to you, it's 10 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys tonight with me, standing in for Patrick, Martin Daubney. Teenage gang members dance and wave machetes after they shot a man in London last year. Tonight, I'll be asking, is it time to declare a national youth crime emergency? Plus,
it was terrifying to have my brother scream and shout at me and my father say things that just simply weren't true.
And now the ginger whinger Prince Harry reportedly says he won't return to royal duties until William apologises. What a right royal farce. And
depressing to hear of price hikes. I'm committed to putting fans at the heart of music.
I mean, seriously, is it really the government's responsibility to help us get Oasis tickets? Well, on my panel tonight, it's the director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster Nina Mishkov. Oh, and Sir Keir Starmer's only gone and done it again.
And the Prime Minister knows...
He's forgotten who the Prime Minister is already now. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Good evening, welcome to the show. Now, the big question I'll be asking surely is it time to call a national youth crime emergency? But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sophia Wenzer.
Martin, thank you. Good evening. I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines just after 10 o'clock. The Grenfell Tower fire, which killed 72 people, was a result of decades of failure. That's according to a long-awaited report. Over almost 1,700 pages, the Grenfell report reveals how missed opportunities by the government, building companies, contractors and council staff turned Grenfell into a death trap. Families and survivors of the deadly blaze 7 years ago say today's final damning report shows they were failed by calculated dishonesty and greed. A 14-year-old boy has been charged with the murder of an 80-year-old grandfather. Bim Coley was attacked while walking his dog in Franklin Park, Brownstone Town, near Leicester on Sunday, and later died in hospital. His family say their hearts are broken. Now, in the US, 2 students and 2 teachers have died after a shooting at a high school in Georgia. These are pictures of Appalachia High School in Barrow County, which was put on lockdown this morning after reports of gunfire there. Georgia State Police say a 14-year-old student at the high school is in custody after the shooting. The White House has now been briefed on the incident. Director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Chris Hosey, has more.
There are 4 individuals who are deceased from this incident, 9 that have been taken to local hospitals with various injuries. Of those that are deceased, 2 are students and 2 are teachers here at the school. As the sheriff mentioned earlier this morning, the shooter is in custody. He is a 14-year-old student here at the high school. Again, he has been taken into custody. He will be charged with murder and he will be tried as an adult.
Back in the UK, Rishi Sunak, now leader of the opposition, has attacked Labour's move to axe a winter fuel allowance for millions of pensioners. He faced off with Sir Keir Starmer at the first Prime Minister's questions since Parliament returned from the summer recess. The Conservative leader accused the Prime Minister of taking money from low-income pensioners and ploughing it into inflation-busting pay rises for union workers. However, Sir Keir Starmer defended his decision to cut winter fuel payments, saying it's essential to stabilise the economy. And Oasis have added 2 new dates for Wembley in 2025 after their tour sold out over the weekend. The band said tickets will be sold by a staggered invitation-only ballot process. Applications to join the ballot will be opened first to the many UK fans who were unsuccessful in the initial sale with Ticketmaster. More details will follow. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, welcome to Modern Britain, where headlines of this kind are becoming all too common. This week, it emerged that the killer of 16-year-old Harry Pittman, who died in a blink of an eye after being stabbed while out celebrating with his friends on New Year's Eve, the boy was also aged just 16. Now, he admitted stabbing Pittman, but argues it was self-defence. Last Thursday, a boy aged just 13 was stabbed to death inside his own home in Oldbury in the West Midlands. And 2 teenagers have been charged with his murder. But it's not just knives. Last March, 4 teenage gang members attempted to shoot and stab a man to death in broad daylight at an overground station in Hackney in East London. Now, afterwards, these killers, they didn't show any remorse. This is how they celebrated.
Straight in my skin. Got ripped my mouth. I ripped up. Just trying to put someone in a hearse. Carry on screaming, 6 in a point. I'll slap me someone burst. Don't get put in a hearse. You won't get put in a hearse.
Well, they danced all the way to jail because they got 77 years between them. But look at this shocking knife crime data from the Youth Justice Board for the year ending March 2023. The latest data available. Youth arrests are up by 9%. Custodial sentences are up by 8%. And behaviour management orders, well, they're up by a staggering 32%. And those are the latest figures, but just imagine what they'll be like in March 2024 or even March 2025. We seem to be spiralling out of control. In London, children as young as 10 years of age now fear being stabbed. My 2 children, aged 10 and 15, they're among them. How many times must I walk my kids past a bunch of flowers tied around a lamppost and explain to them that somebody else has been pointlessly killed on the streets of Britain? For that reason, I believe it's high time to declare a youth crime emergency in the United Kingdom. How many more lives must be cut tragically short by tearaway teens before we have the guts to declare a national youth crime emergency? And now let's get the thoughts of my panel. And my panel tonight is the director for the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, Adam Brooks, the pub owner and businessman, and of course, Nina Mishkov, the broadcaster. So welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start with you this time, Nina. The figures are staggering, they're shocking. We're seeing so many young people kill and be killed, and the problem I have with this is, have we totally lost any sense of respect for law and order? Is that what's driving it?
That's partially it, but I would put it down to, I mean, in general terms, parenting is not what it used to be. It absolutely is not. There used to be talk about kids in the old days, oh, he was badly brought up. You never hear that now. Look at that recent case with the 11-year-old boy who was caught up in the riots, and when it came to the court, his mum had gone off to Ibiza. I know that's one case, but so we're talking about parenting. Put that in a box. Then you look at 14 years of Tory rule. What did the Tories do in 2010, 2011, 2012? They dumped pretty much, dropped by 69%, the youth centres. All the places where kids could go, and the playing fields have been sold off. So there's nowhere for kids to go. Added to which, many years ago, before social media, the only influences that kids had on them were from their parents, their teachers, or their mates, and they'd fall in with the wrong crowd, perhaps. Now, through their phones, they have access to more of the wrong crowd. So you've got... You know, there's everything there. There's porn, there's Andrew Tate. So all of these influences are very hard for a parent who is trying to do the right thing, the responsible parent, to battle against. Because first of all, they don't know what their kid's watching on their screens. Okay. And secondly, how can they counter that?
Mark Littlewood, so we've listed the Tories, of course, a lack of ping-pong tables, of course, Andrew Tate, social media. Are we ignoring something else, an elephant in the room here? We seem to have a huge cultural problem here. The facts are the facts, and the facts are not racist. I want to dive into this because I think we need to address this topic head on. Also, in that youth justice data I went through, there are some other startling facts and figures. Black children make up 6% of the population aged 10 to 17, but 12% of arrests and 26% of those children in custody, twice as likely to be arrested, 4 times likely to be incarcerated. Is that ping-pong tables? Is that social media? Or is it something else?
No, I mean, I don't accept that a lack of government spending is what has caused this problem. The government has spent more money year on year across the board. You've got to make trade-offs. We're having all sorts of debates on GBNews about whether pensioners or railwaymen should get the money. But the government itself spends an utter fortune on a whole range of welfare services.
Excuse me, Mark, but we were just talking the fact they cut it by 69%. So that's not a great deal of money. The money that was there was taken away. Well, to which they cut the police force by 20%. Bobbies.
I'm taking from Martin's inference. I'm not totally persuaded that more ping-pong tables and youth clubs would solve that. Well, that's what you get in youth centres. Would solve this problem. I think that the law and order and justice system in this country, not just for younger people, is practically broken now. It takes forever to get people to court. Our prisons are full. I think actually...
That's not the fault of the Conservatives?
Well, hang on. I mean, maybe it's the fault of Sir Keir Starmer. He's putting people in for Facebook posts, but not people...
Well, that's it. I also think we need to send fewer people to prison for longer, is my general rule of thumb. But I'd say this as well. One area of agreement with Nina is parental responsibility. And it might be that culturally that has lagged behind, but I actually think there should be legal requirements here. If your kid has done something completely out of control, I'm not holding you fully responsible for it. You can't completely control what your 13-year-old son does, but I think you should be in part answerable for it. I think you should be in court with the kid. And if you can't give an explanation, then there should be fines, punishments for the parents.
Yes. Adam Brooks, but how does that work if the parents aren't there? 95% of those in criminal gangs don't have an active father involved in their lives. 85% of young men in jail don't have an active father involved. We hear a lot about toxic masculinity. Andrew Tate, present, active, involved, positive role models, men don't get any talk about. You've spectacularly dodged the question there about the cultural issue. You have some experience in this.
We hold those people responsible.
Let's talk about it.
Look, firstly, I think we need to explain to the viewers that Andrew Tate is not a reason why people are carrying knives or stabbing people in this country. That's not the case. Look, I'm a very vocal knife crime campaigner. I've got skin in the game. My father was murdered by a machete gang when I was 11. I've been stabbed. I've been around pubs and clubs all my life. I know, unfortunately, know more about this than most. We have got criminal gangs, well, young gangs, roaming the streets of London and towns with zombie knives, machetes and swords. And you're more likely to be arrested for an online Facebook post than some of those are. Now, we've got soft sentencing in this country. You know, we've had recent cases where people have been caught with machetes twice and they've still avoided jail. What is that about? Look, there's a lot to blame. Parents must take a lot of the responsibility. But our schools, why are they not teaching the consequences of crime? Now, if I was, say, you know, the school minister, I would make every school take their kids to a prison once in their lifetime, scare them, show them what a prison cell is, tell them what the consequences of their actions will be. A lot of kids do not realise, they do not understand.
Don't you think that comes down to parents? It's up to parents to instil in their children the values and that actions have consequences.
What if they're not there? Absent parents is a huge issue.
Well, the
David Lammy report addressed this back. This is years and years ago. If the parents aren't there to put that justice in, the state's meant to be the parents?
I noticed that when that 11-year-old kid was in court and the mother was absent, nobody said, "And where is his father?" I noticed that.
So, Martin, having been, I think, unfairly accused of spectacularly dodging the question, let me address it full on. Yes, of course, the lack of two active parents is often strongly correlated, not just crime, but, you know, poor educational opportunities, long-term lower income. If the father can be identified and has not been active, I want to hear from this guy in court. Why your son's been going out doing this? You haven't spoken to him for 5 years. You haven't overseen it. You are partially responsible. I'm not saying you literally lock up the parents as well, but the inactive father should have to explain through the judicial process how he was being negligent.
The thing is with young teenage boys, I understand, is that if there is an imbalance in the family, if there is only one parent, it's generally the mother, OK? And what children crave, actually, are families. Yeah. They want a balance. You know, a family is two parents.
They're finding bad families on the street in the form of gangs.
But the thing is, exactly, so that they need a tribe.
They find role models elsewhere.
Boys go into a pack mentality, tribal things. Girls, it's a different thing. Girls go inwards and they become more anxious, more lacking in self-esteem, and that brings mental health issues.
Look, I work a lot in boxing with community figures that are black and that will say to me, we've got a terrible black-on-black violence problem and black youngsters carrying knives. And that is black individuals in the community saying, Adam, we can say that, but if you go on telly and say that, there are going to be some that are going to call you racist. As you said earlier, the stats are quite alarming in that field.
But are you saying there's no white crime in terms of teenage boys?
Why would you say that?
No, I'm asking you a question.
You're trying to paint me as a racist.
No, I'm asking you a simple question.
Martin gave you the numbers, Nina. It's disproportionate.
No.
It's not that there's no white crime, it's proportionality.
Nothing is going to change until we can speak about that.
Yeah, and I'll give some more numbers now. Facts aren't racist, these are the facts.
No, I understand. I'm asking the question.
In London, black Londoners make up 13% of the population. They also make up 45% of London's knife murder victims, 61% of knife murder perpetrators, and 53% of knife crime perpetrators. There is an issue, and I just feel that we continually bury our head in the sands about it. The facts are the facts, and we can't address a problem unless we address it factually.
Martin, I remember growing up looking at a police officer and thinking, oh, my God, I don't want any trouble there. I've got to respect them. They was all 6 foot tall, huge, and, you know, now some of our police officers can't even run five steps without, you know, being out of breath. They look terrible. They're not intimidating at all. And gangs look at that. They laugh on TikTok. They're mocking the police.
Yes, but the thing
is, that is the society that we've got.
We don't have bobbies on the beat that we used to have. We don't have community policing. We don't have...
And there's too much form filling rather than actual police work.
We have to leave it there. Once again, fantastic debate. Nina, Adam, Mark, superb stuff. Now, coming up, I'll have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages with my panel. And Sir Keir Starmer, well, he's at it again.
And the Prime Minister knows...
I'll reveal which embarrassing mistakes Keir Starmer keeps making in just a few moments' time. But first, it looked like Prince Harry was all geared up to re-enter the royal fold, but now it's emerged that the Duke of Sussex wants an apology from Prince William first. So, will the warring brothers ever bury the hatchet? Well, royal expert Richard Fitzwilliam's got the inside track, and he joins me next. If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
A window cleaner is battling to prove he has the only portrait of William Shakespeare made in his lifetime.
Yes, so owner Stephen Wadlow has been trying to validate the painting for years. He's had it x-rayed, he's had it analysed by experts, he's had it scientifically dated back to 1595 when the playwright was 31 years old. If it is the Bard, it could be worth north of £200 million.
Steve, welcome to GB News. First of all, just explain how you came to have this painting in your possession.
It was sat there all my lifetime, sort of thing, while I was growing up, above the television in the corner. It was only back about 12 years ago that a visitor, she said, "Oh, I think it looks like William Shakespeare, or, you know, I like your copy of William Shakespeare," and was shocked to see it was an original painting. So it was only then that I started researching, and the different institutions have helped with the x-rays and all the rest of it. But then, is it actually Shakespeare? Well, all the facial comparisons, technology, everything like that, all matches with the Droschau, which is the only known 2D image of Shakespeare. And who do you go to find that out?
There's a suggestion in the Sun's write-up of this story that you've been struggling to be heard in the academic world, the lofty art world. It's all a bit snooty. Yes. It's about who you know, and you're a tradesman.
Yes, yes. That is definitely true in some avenues, but then I have to say, and it's lovely to be able to have this opportunity to say it, there's other people in that world that have been fabulous. It's taken a long time to sort of get listened to. We want the discussion out there because all the evidence that we've got indicates that this really should be discussed.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Martin Daubney, standing in for Patrick. Now, despite reports last week that the Ginger Whinger, the Duke of Sussex, could be on the verge of returning to the royal fold, well, Prince Harry has reportedly thrown a spanner in the works by demanding an apology from his brother Prince William before any form of royal reunion will be possible. Now, it comes after the launch of Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, hit the brakes, with the US Patent Office denying her trademarks application, saying that businesses are not allowed to trademark geographic locations, including the nickname of the coastline around the Sussex's Santa Barbara, California home, the American Riviera. You couldn't make it up. And I'm joined now by the royal commentator, Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, welcome to the show. Always a delight. Let's start with this preposterous demand for an apology from Prince William. I think that's about as likely to happen as me flying to the moon.
Yes, it's quite extraordinary. I mean, it's utterly bizarre, to be frank. And if it isn't true, if this is just a false report, the Sussexes ought to specifically deny it, because, I mean, it's, as you say, it's absolutely laughable. It takes me back, actually, to January of last year, at the time that Spare was being launched. And Harry gave an interview to the Telegraph, and there he laid out a variety, I thought, of very controversial thoughts. They included the fact that he wanted an apology, and he was calling out, I quote, the royal family, you know what you did, and I now know why you did it, and you've been caught, so just come clean. Precisely what you'd make of that, of course, is to some extent one's own interpretation, but obviously it was the way he felt Meghan was being treated. And then the interview went on almost unbelievably to say that he was doing this for George, Charlotte and Louis, as though William and Catherine were inadequate parents. The whole thing was ridiculous. He was saving the monarchy from itself. The whole thing was just unbelievable then. It's quite extraordinary now, especially with two members of the royal family seriously ill, that this sort of thing will raise its head now.
And meanwhile, Richard, there might be a right royal tip of the hat to the US Patent Office. They've firmly rebuffed the approach for the Sussexes trademark on the American Riviera Orchard brand. Marvellous stuff. Tell us more.
Well, I would have thought that, for example, something like this, and you explained it earlier, the fact that you can't apparently use the name of a county or specific place in your brand, lifestyle brand. I mean, it is rather extraordinary that none of the Sussexes administrative team, this is a sort of basic thing that they would know. No one appears to have looked it up or discovered it, so they've now had the setback. In American Riviera Orchard, I mean, we know that Meghan's been sending jams to celebrities, and, by the way, had remarkably few endorsements. But nonetheless, this was supposed to be her big thing, and it would tie in, we thought, with a Netflix program on cookery. It looks as if it's going to be very considerably delayed, and possibly the name may well have to change. Absolute chaos, clearly.
And Richard, this may help explain why none of this jam ever came to light. I mean, for my sins, I actually quite fancied a taste of it just to see what all the fuss was about. It seems, as you're right, the absolute basics of any business is you get all your trademarks tied up, you get your website domains tied up, you make sure you do all this groundwork before you go to market. This is total and utter incompetence.
Oh, yes, indeed. And also, you have to ask, whereas Meghan has always strongly denied any accusations that she is, shall we say, difficult to work for, there has been quite a turnover of people working for the Sussexes over the years, and you do wonder also whether the right ones have been chosen. That's another issue. Otherwise, something like this would just not happen.
And Richard, there's a final point in this I expect an apology story, and apparently the Prince Harry would be prepared to work for the royals and join the firm if the King apologised. That's even less likely.
I think myself that this report is, shall we say, a little economical with the truth, because this is just a pure fantasy. The royal family is the world's most high profile. There's no question that at the Oprah interview with the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary with Spare and those disastrous interviews that Harry did to promote it, and he made a fool of himself in part of the book, in my opinion, and put some very ill-advised things in, but at least he hasn't put 400 pages of, what he said he took out on the same interview with the Telegraph. He boasted that he'd done so. That seemed to me to be a threat. I just hope that the Sussexes realise that reconciliation one day would be very, very significant, but there is no way back for them at the moment and foreseeably, and I'm sure that King Charles feels the same.
Can I very quickly ask you, Richard, do you think that Prince Harry is feeling like a bit of a spare himself, rattling around, playing second fiddle to Meghan continually?
Well, now this, of course, is something that people have been speculating on. I have to say that with Invictus, that's fair. That is a remarkable achievement. And then, of course, there's, Child and also Sentebale and Lesotho. I think he was attached to all of those before he was married. There's no doubt that Meghan is very often appears to be taking centre stage. I think they work well enough as a team. But the problem that Harry has, he's only got one project that I know specifically for Netflix, and that deals with polo. It's an elitist sport, and I doubt he'll get massive numbers of viewers, rather like the Invictus for series for Netflix, which, yes, it had fascinating stories, but it was some 5 to 6 hours long, and people didn't tune in. If they're going to keep their contract, it expires next year, they must do work. And let's hope, for the sake of the royal family, that there's some sort of balance, because otherwise you never know what else may be written, an interview may come out. They're completely unpredictable, but there's also a ruthless streak, and that I find deplorable.
We've got to leave it there. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. I think, like most people watching, I'd rather prune a tree with my teeth than watch 6 hours of Netflix with the sisters. Thanks very much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Now, coming up is tomorrow's newspaper's front pages. They're flying in, and my panel of experts are on standby to give me their unrivalled analysis. Oh, and who's really running the country?
And the Prime Minister knows.
Yes, I'll reveal Sir Keir Starmer's latest gaffe in just a few moments' time. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. We're at the start of a pretty wet period across southern areas with a warning in force all the way through until the end of Friday. But it will remain quite dry, actually, across north and western areas. We've got high pressure starting to build in from the north and west. We will develop an easterly wind, however, so that's going to drag in some cloud across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England as well overnight tonight. Further north and west, though, staying dry and clear across Northern Ireland and western areas of Scotland, as well as some northwestern areas of Wales. Into the south, though, some outbreaks of very heavy rain starting to develop, and we do have that warning in force. So potentially a bit of a fresh start to the day across northwestern areas of Scotland, but it's across the south with plenty of cloud around and outbreaks of heavy rain. We could see some travel disruption where we have got that warning in force. Not everywhere is going to see the rain all day, but where you do see it is likely to bring some surface water. Could be quite a murky start to the day across eastern areas of Scotland as well as northeastern England, but plenty of sunshine across Northern Ireland, the Western Highlands as well as the islands throughout Thursday, and it will feel quite warm in that sunshine with light winds. Much better weather than we've had lately across these areas, and in fact temperatures could climb higher than they have done since May by Friday across parts of the northwest. Very different story though in the south, with outbreaks of heavy rain developing, most likely to turn quite heavy across southwestern areas of England, South Wales as well. So pretty dull day across the south, but quite a big difference from the northwest. And a similar day to come on Friday. Further outbreaks of rain across the south, so we'd like to see further flooding issues and surface water. Easterly wind will continue to bring some cloud to the coast of the northeast, but it will burn back a little more, so there will be more in the way of sunshine on Friday, more widely in northern areas. Another fine day to come Saturday and Sunday in the north, with further outbreaks of heavy rain across southern areas. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Martin Daubney, covering for Patrick only on GB News. Now it's time to bring you tomorrow's news tonight and the most entertaining paper review on the television. And the very first front pages have just been delivered for my press pack. Now, here's the front page of The Guardian, and it's measuring on Grenfell, a disaster caused by dishonesty and greed. Next up is the Daily Mirror, which is also majoring on the same story, of course, and it has that same very, very powerful picture of the 72 deceased. And the headline simply reads, "Now get them justice." And the same story is covered by The Eye, and again they're majoring on that mosaic of the 72 who perished in that tragic fire in 2017. And it says here, the simple headline, "Everyone failed them." And then moving on now to the Daily Mail. And the same story again. The headline here simply says, "Will they ever get justice?" And it has there the Grenfell Action Group in the background. That's the statement they gave out earlier on at a press conference. And finally, we have the Daily Telegraph. And they are leading on sewage leak water bosses to face 2 years jail time, very much sounding like a Liberal Democrat policy there, and a little bit of Robert Jenrick as the frontrunner in the Tory leader race. So now let's bring in my panel. Let's start, of course, with the big story of the day, hardly any surprises, Mark Littlewood, and that is the Grenfell tragedy, and a very, very powerful use, I think. All the newspapers going the same route of using all of the faces of the deceased in a way that's very, very powerfully put.
Yeah, no, it is. But, I mean, I think one thing here that we've just got to get right is it looks like we're finally getting to the right answers, and perhaps, you know, eventually some people will actually see justice. But this shouldn't have taken 7 years, this inquiry. We are the slowest people in the world at any form of inquiry. I lost track of how long did it take the Iraq War inquiry? A decade?
The Kelcott inquiry.
Absolute farce. And the Metropolitan Police have said that it will take them 18 months to look through this report before they even consider any prosecutions. In my view, justice delayed is justice denied. And this should have happened much, much more rapidly. I hope justice is actually served, but serving it something like 10 years after the event is not good enough.
Nina, I spoke to an advocate of the families earlier on. They said precisely that. Very, very movingly said that this 7-year delay has decreased the chance of a justice. They want corporate manslaughter charges. They want individuals to be jailed for what happened. They also want this cladding to be banned throughout anywhere in the world. But of course, they were pointing out a very, very pertinent point that this might not make the grade in Britain. So it's been shipped abroad and been used in countries with far less stringent building control systems. So the problem is being solved. The problem is being moved. But in terms of getting justice, do you think that's the right route to go down, actually jailing people for this?
Absolutely. If people are found criminally lacking, then they should be prosecuted. People have got to be held to account. You cannot have a situation where people die through negligence. Continuous negligence from all. They've been, as you said, they've been let down by everybody. And the trouble, as you say, you're quite right. We kick things into the long grass very often. How long did the Hillsborough disaster take? That literally took decades. I don't think that's the situation, because you need to find out the facts. You do need to know that. But by calling a public inquiry like this, it meant that all prosecutions and any criminal cases are going to be delayed.
Adam, and the point is, successive governments of every political colour failed. You know, the Conservatives, the Coalition, the Labour Party. This came in pre-Blair. Now the Labour Party are in power again. The book, I guess, stops with them. So Keir Starmer said very clearly today that they will make sure that justice is served.
Well, it has to be, because now the time frame is going to be within their 5 years. But look, it's very, very hard to imagine the pain and the suffering of these families when you don't know someone that's involved, and you see Grenfell and you can be sort of immune from that pain. Now they've put the faces on the front of these newspapers, I think is very powerful, and it should remind people that life is very short and that tomorrow is never promised, and to love your loved ones and appreciate what you've got, because this is one of the worst tragedies that this country has ever seen.
Well put. Let's move on now to the Daily Telegraph, if we could. And they're majoring on the Jenrick being the front runner in the Tory leader race. Mark Littlewood, have to come to you as the director of Popular Conservatives. What's your take on Jenrick being the front runner? I was rather surprised, as Anne Widdecombe was, that Priti Patel was the first horse to fall.
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised. And actually, I noticed on your news bulletins everyone's been saying Priti only got 14 votes. In fact, the gap between first and last wasn't that great. All of the vote shares were clustered. I'm not wholly surprised. It is difficult from these numbers to work out who the final two will be. I think actually James Cleverly did a little bit better than expected. He came a solid third, only I think 1 vote behind Kemi Badenoch. Tom Tugendhat perhaps did a little worse than expected. But what's likely to happen now, Martin, is although it's not really right to say that the Conservatives have 2 tribes, the One Nation lot and the Drives.
They've got 6, haven't they?
But they sort of eventually, the various different groups gather together, and you're likely to see, I think, one of Jenrick, Badenoch on the ballot, and then probably one of Tugendhat, Cleverly and Stride. And Cleverly's got himself into quite a good position here. But Robert Jenrick will be delighted that he topped the poll. That puts momentum with him. He only needs, I think it's 41 votes to be absolutely guaranteed to be on the ballot. I think he'll make it.
Can I ask you, Adam, quickly, does any of this make any difference? I hear all the time from Conservative members, they think, well, these are the same old people reheated. Either we need someone new or they're just going to vote for reform.
As someone that was a Conservative voter in 2019, I think the only person there that maybe have lured me back into the party if she had been tough and got in was Priti Patel.
I loathed her, I have to tell you that.
I don't. But I've met her. I thought she was a nice person as well. She's tough talking. She's a Conservative. Jenrick, the last year or so, I've been very impressed by him. His rhetoric on immigration and challenging the narrative on illegal immigration has been pretty powerful. Before that, I wasn't such a fan. But look, if he becomes Conservative leader and he pushes on with that and talks the talk, I think they might have a chance of getting some reform voters back.
You're itching to get in, far away.
The fact of the matter is that they're pretty second-rate in terms of politicians. They don't have... None of them has the stature. They really don't. And what makes me laugh is that there's only 121 Conservative MPs. So who honestly cares?
What, Keir Starmer has the stature?
He certainly has the stature. And let me tell you, he made a wonderful speech about Grenfell today. I watched it live.
Right.
It was very powerful, very moving, and Rishi Sunak acknowledged how good it was.
The reason this matters, irrespective of whether you're sympathetic to the Conservative Party or not, is as the official opposition, the government needs to be held to account.
Yeah.
That's the way our adversarial democratic process works. And you might have different... I actually think all 6 candidates are pretty good in their own different ways. Very good, actually. And it matters. Whether you think the Conservatives will win the next election or not, I actually think they've got a chance. The Labour Party's already starting to tank in the opinion polls. But irrespective of that, irrespective of which side of the fence you're on, this job matters because cross-examining the government on a day-to-day basis is a vital part of our democratic system.
Well, I would have said Rishi Sunak was better than all of them, frankly.
All right, we've got to move on because now what's the most embarrassing foot-in-mouth moment that you've ever had? Forgetting the name of someone you're talking to at a party. Well, spare a thought for poor old Sir Keir Starmer, who has a severe case of déjà vu during Prime Minister's Question Times earlier on today. Let's have a look.
Serious issue, it requires serious consideration, and the Prime Minister knows the legal frameworks that have to be kept under review. It's the same test for all licences, as the Prime Minister knows, and I don't think the Prime Minister is really inviting me to put that to one side. We have to, the Leader of the Opposition.
There you go, 5 times he refers to Rishi Sunak as the Prime Minister. Nina,
Force of habit. Force of habit. The guy's been doing this for 4.5, nearly 5 years with Boris Johnson, with Rishi Sunak, with, God forbid, Liz Truss. And he's, you know, that's what he's been accustomed to saying. He'll grow out of it by next week, don't worry.
I wouldn't have you be so forgiving if it was Conservative made the same mistake.
He was forensic. He's not so forensic now, is he, Martin?
There we go, Mark.
Yeah, it's quite a mistake. I wonder whether psychologically Keir Starmer actually prefers being Leader of the Opposition.
I've got to say, I still sing God Save the Queen. I think it's just like deep, deep muscle memory.
Yes, that's true.
And normally when I sing it, I've had a few sherbets. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, panel. Now, coming up, I'll have the rest of tomorrow's front newspaper pages, and the Oasis reunion has finally hit Parliament.
And the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister knows that.
Now, is it really the government's responsibility to crack down on Ticketmaster? My panel will debate that after this short break.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Would you have Harry back with open arms? And this is Ian. Hi, Ian. Harry is unfortunately not well. He's an emotional wreck. Ian, you actually took the words out of my mouth. I remember when I was younger, queuing up for hours for West Ham tickets. I'm that sad. But at least I got the ticket. It was my ticket. They knew it was me, and there were no touts involved. It's Forever says Harry can stay away. He was so quick to condemn this country as racist and to trash the Queen and royal family's reputations. He should be banished and his titles removed. He has not earned the right to call himself anything with a royal title. Ooh, passionate. Since moving to the US with Meghan, the American dream has had a number of issues for him, I think it's fair to say. But if Harry was to return, would he be welcome? And could he make it up with William? Look, if Oasis, sorry I said the O word, have done it, can William and Harry?
Well, I think it's going to present a lot of challenges. I mean, we've got to be clear here. When it comes to reconciliation, if it's possible, obviously, to mend the rift with William, clearly that is to be welcomed. But as for Harry returning, what precisely would that mean? What precisely would Harry want? Because if it is in any sense a return to royal duties, you really got to be very, very careful with what you're dealing with. As far as the royal family are concerned, for goodness sake, reconciliation, yes, but actual work as a senior working royal is not, in my opinion.
So I always think it's quite funny listening to serious people talk seriously about the royals, because it's not that serious, a lot of it. But actually, I think where I'm fascinated by them is that we can sort of see a bit of ourselves as a society and as individuals.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Martin Daubney, only on GB News. Now it's time to return now to the liveliest paper review on the tally, and more front pages have been delivered hot off the press. First up, we've got The Times. They're also leading on Grenfell, saying killed by greed and a culture of dishonesty. Grenfell reports blames unscrupulous building firms for blaze as families of the 72 killed demand manslaughter charges. And next up, we have the Daily Express. Daily Express also leading on Grenfell, saying 72 killed by dishonesty, indifference, complacency. Damning reports exposes path to disaster that turned Grenfell Tower into a death trap. And finally, we've got I believe, the Soar-away Daily Star with a complete change of pace. They're saying the orange man baby, of course referring to Donald Trump there. I'll tell all I know about the little green men. Totally sane ex-president's pledge on ETs. He's basically saying here, if he gets into power, he will release the entire US database on everything about aliens. Sure to be a huge vote winner, no doubt.
What a Fruit Loop.
Yeah, well, why don't we start... No, let's not start with that. In the spirit of good taste, let's go to The Times. More on Grenfell, killed by greed and cultural dishonesty. The same in The Express, 72 killed by dishonesty, indifference, complacency. This is dominating almost all of the front pages.
Well, you know, the awful thing was that when the residents complained about, you know, the tower being a fire hazard, they just weren't taken seriously.
That's exactly
Nothing
right.
was done. So it got to that stage where they were complaining and saying, look, they didn't know about cladding. They didn't know anything about that. But they said this is a fire hazard. I mean, that is criminal negligence, not to take these things seriously. It really is.
OK. Now let's move on to some good news for the millions of Oasis fans that failed to secure tickets for the band's reunion tour last weekend, because the Britpop legends have added a further 2 dates to their tour next year. But it's not such good news for Ticketmaster, which has come under fire for its dynamic pricing model, which sees prices increase when demand is high and supply is low. Now, that system has been slammed by disgruntled Oasis fans, and today the issue even reached Parliament.
Last week, ticket-selling websites like Ticketmaster left millions of Oasis fans furious. This profiteering at fans' expense is not a one-off. The Cooperative Party's campaigning for a new licensing body with real teeth to tackle this online touting.
It is depressing to hear of price hikes. I'm committed to putting fans at the heart of music and end extortionate price resales, and we're starting a consultation to work out how best we can do this.
Don't you think it's astonishing that getting tickets for a gig or not is actually being mentioned in Parliament? Now, this Labour Party seems to want to get involved in every interface of our life, but Mark, is it really the government's job to give a damn about whether or not people got Oasis tickets?
It's the end of days, Martin. I mean, this is the mother of parliaments, and we're talking about the Gallagher brothers and a pop concert and how they allocate their tickets. Dynamic pricing is a very efficient and sensible way of selling a service or a product. You need to think of it a bit like an auction. If you go to an auction house, you know what the starting price is, but depending on how many people bid it up, it might go for 10 times that. That's really all Oasis have done here. I mean, I think they probably did mess up by not informing customers what it was. It's a bit awkward if you're in a queue for 5 hours and you get to the front of the queue and the price has changed. But if there are a limited number of tickets and millions of people who want to go, you have a pricing mechanism. The idea that this comes up at Prime Minister's questions, given the severity of a whole range of problems the country faces, I despair.
And Nina, isn't that the point? You know, we've got such endless problems. We've been discussing them on the show. We've got teen knife crime epidemic. We've got the Grenfell disaster. The Labour government cares more, it seems, about stopping you having a fag outside a football match or whether or not you get a ticket.
No,
Zara Sultana, a Labour backbencher, she said nationalise Ticketmaster.
Unbelievable.
No, the thing is, you know, I understand about market forces. I mean, airline tickets, holidays, you know, package holidays during school summer holidays, the prices go up. I understand about market forces, but when it gets to be sort of capitalism run completely riot, it is, and taking advantage of people, taking real advantage of people, it seems financially
wrong. Who have they taken advantage of? You don't have to go to an Oasis concert for crying out loud.
They are preying on people.
Let's nationalise Oasis as well as Ticketmaster.
There's a bigger scandal in all this, and this was highlighted by my friend Sacha Lord, who is the nighttime czar of Manchester.
This is the hotels.
And it's the hotels. Yeah. People that had existing bookings in the hotels near these concerts had their bookings cancelled and then were offered the rooms back at 3 or 4 times the rate. That is a disgrace. That maybe should be brought up in Parliament. That's criminal, in my opinion.
Well, hopefully they'll look at it the same light.
But this is a distraction. This is a distraction for Keir Starmer and Labour away from their failures on crime, on immigration, and him tanking in the polls.
They haven't had long enough to fail.
Well, then don't waste a minute of time on Oasis pop concerts, then.
This is part of our national culture, like it or not. It is young people, well, actually mostly middle-aged men, are the ones who are
There seems to be no space in our lives now in which politicians do not wish to intrude. Keir Starmer said he was going to tread a little more lightly on our lives. He seems to be treading much more heavily on every aspect of our lives.
Treading on this to help people rather than hinder them.
Let's move on. This is where champagne supernova meets champagne socialism. Now it's time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and also our union jackass. So let's start with you, Mark. Who are your nominees tonight for Jackass and Greatest Britain?
So do you want me to start with Greatest Britain?
Yes.
Yeah, so Greatest Britain honorary nomination, very rare for me. I'm giving it to a regulator.
Yeah, go on.
The US Patent Office, you featured on this show earlier, who have rightly told Meghan that she cannot own the intellectual property over the name of a piece of geographic land in the United States. Rare to praise a regulator, but when they get it right, 3 cheers.
Super stuff. Adam, who's
Mine
your
is an honorary nomination. It's Gerald Darmian, the French Interior Minister, who's basically given us a few home truths on why we are a magnet for illegal migration.
Superb nomination. And over to you, Nina.
Greatest Britain is James Corden. Today in the Mirror, the pictures in Barry in Wales of the filming that had started on the very final episode of Gavin and Stacey, which comes out on Christmas Day, I think. It's going to be... And it's... God knows we need some sunshine in our lives, and that brings it. He and Ruth Jones have created these wonderful characters that kept us going, and I am utterly thrilled.
OK, well, don't forget, he hasn't been in Britain for most of the time.
And he's also a massive diva.
You're naffed off to Hollywood.
I don't care. He's providing Gavin and Stacey, which is perfect.
OK. Well, why don't we then go to your union greatest Britain winner? I'm going to go. I'm going to go with you, Adam. Yeah, I'm going with you. I'm going for the French Foreign Minister Gérald Darmanin. He basically spoke as the adult in the room by saying it is the endless freebies that are tempting people across the channel to Britain. Isn't it ironic, in the spirit of the entente cordiale, that we're going to make a Frenchman the greatest?
I'm pretty confident that's the first time that a French politician has ever won that award, and I suspect it will be the last.
And it may be the last. Now let's move on to the union jackass.
Well, union jackass, you mentioned her a few moments ago, Martin, is Zara Sultana, the Labour MP for Coventry South, who thinks that a key priority for the government should be to nationalise Ticketmaster. The government struggled to run anything properly. The idea that they could run pop concert ticketing is laughable.
Adam.
My union jackass is Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, for calling Rishi Sunak the Prime Minister 5 times today in PMQs. He's not so forensic now.
Maybe he secretly wants out. And Nina, who's your nomination for?
The Gallagher brothers, because by reuniting and getting all these gigs going, they have given us the most boring time. I am so bored of middle-aged men saying definitely, maybe, as if everybody's heard that for the first time. It is just, and the music's so derivative. I can't stand them.
I think they'd be a big fan of yours.
I don't care. I couldn't give a toss.
I think we've established that. Right, I'm going to go with Zara Sultana. I think Zara Sultana is a solid winner, and not only that does she want Ticketmaster to be nationalised, she also said yesterday, in fact, that we should ban the sale of all arms to Israel. She wants to go the full pro-Palestine, so she wants to stop selling arms to Israel and start selling Oasis tickets to socialists. What could possibly go wrong? Thank you very much to my panel. I'll be back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. I'll be covering up for Patrick once again. Next up, it's Headliners after your weather with Annie Shuttleworth. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks to my panel. Nina, Adam, Mark's been superb. Hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. We're at the start of a pretty wet period across southern areas with a warning in force all the way through until the end of Friday. But it will remain quite dry, actually, across north and western areas. We've got high pressure starting to build in from the north and west. We will develop an easterly wind, however, so that's going to drag in some cloud across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England as well overnight tonight. Further north and west, though, staying dry and clear across Northern Ireland and western areas of Scotland, as well as some northwestern areas of Wales. Into the south, though, some outbreaks of very heavy rain starting to develop, and we do have that warning in force. So potentially a bit of a fresh start to the day across northwestern areas of Scotland, but it's across the south with plenty of cloud around and outbreaks of heavy rain. We could see some travel disruption where we have got that warning in force. Not everywhere is going to see the rain all day, but where you do see it is likely to bring some surface water. Could be quite a murky start to the day across eastern areas of Scotland as well as northeastern England, but plenty of sunshine across Northern Ireland, the Western Highlands as well as the islands throughout Thursday, and it will feel quite warm in that sunshine with light winds. Much better weather than we've had lately across these areas, and in fact temperatures could climb higher than they have done since May by Friday across parts of the northwest. Very different story though in the south, with outbreaks of heavy rain developing, most likely to turn quite heavy across southwestern areas of England, South Wales as well. So pretty dull day across the south, but quite a big difference from the northwest. And a similar day to come on Friday. Further outbreaks of rain across the south, so we'd like to see further flooding issues and surface water. Easterly wind will continue to bring some cloud to the coast of the northeast, but it will burn back a little more, so there will be more in the way of sunshine on Friday, more widely.
This is